agendas. I have agendas in the back of the room as well as copies of the PowerPoint presentation that I'll be going through today. We're also live streaming, and we also have a few folks on the phone which will go through introductions here real soon. I will ask that everybody that's here today make sure that when you sign in the back of the room that you legibly print your email address, because you will be part of an email listserv that we create after this meeting to help communicate as we progress through this process. So if you haven't done that already, make sure you give us your email address and name and contact information before you leave here today. Something happened in that speaker. Maybe I just wasn't talking into the microphone very well. Right, Kevin? Speak into the microphone. Okay. So if you would, please turn your mic on when you talk so that we can hear you out in the internet land. Say what? Sound guys, they say that that speaker is cutting out. I'm not sure what to do about that. All right, well, I'm going to keep going, and they're going to try to get the sound corrected as we go. First thing I'd like to do is kind of go around the room so that we can get introductions out of the way. Please speak into the microphone so that our friends on the internet can hear you, as well as those that are in the room, and we'll go from there. So, Hannah, would you please start?
Sure. I'm Hannah Humphrey with the Financial Assistance Center in the Water Program.
Jay Hoskins with MSD.
Tom Rotterman, Boone County Regional Sewer District.
So if you are speaking into the microphone and there's a red light, that means it's on. If there's not a red light, it's not on. If it's one that has the red button, if it's down, it's off. If it's up, it's on.
Let me do that again.
Please.
Lara Floria, Boone County Regional Sewer District.
Thanks.
Christy Savage Park, Water Protection Program, Compliance and Enforcement.
David Castelletto, Ozarks Environmental Services.
Leslie Holloway, Missouri Farm Bureau.
Derek Steen, Missouri Corn and Missouri Soybean.
Good job, Darren.
Welcome.
Melissa Myers, Continental Cement. Cindy LePage, Engineering Section. Amber Steele, Missouri Department of Natural Resources, Missouri Geological Survey.
Norm Plasmeyer, Lathrop.
Art Gooden, Missouri Department of Natural Resources, Southeast Regional Office.
Lacey Hirschvogel, Missouri Public Utility Alliance.
Eric Crawford, Missouri Public Utility Alliance. Morgan Mundell, Missouri Limestone Producers Association.
Kevin Perry, Reg Forum.
Michael Lavitt, Water Protection Program, Operating Permit Section.
John Hope, Water Protection Program, Watershed Protection Section.
I'm Joel Rushley with DNR General Counsel Office.
Lisa Stokin, DNR Budget Program.
Jody Gerling, Water Protection Program.
My name is John Rustage. I work in the engineering section of the water program.
Good afternoon, Darlene Helmig, Operator Certification Section. Is it on? I don't hear it. Hello?
Anybody got the other mic?
Testing. Stacy Allen with the Air Pollution Control Program with DNR.
Quinn Milberg with Water Quality Monitoring DNR.
Becky Kripe, DNR Water Protection Program.
Now that mic went bad. Something's going on.
Min Holt with BASF.
Testing. Nope. Hello?
Jeff Corman, the Midwest Assistance Program.
Thanks, Jeff. Just keep going, please.
Ross Lean with the Missouri Chamber of Commerce.
Rich Kerr.
Rich Germinder.
off to my left. Dave, did you introduce yourself? Thanks. All right, we're having some technical difficulties with the sound right now, and so we're just going to power through this until they get the sound up and running. And so I'm going to speak extra loud, and so I ask that you all speak extra loud if you have questions or can't hear me. You have to yell and say, repeat that, or what have you. It's very distracting over there, guys. Ed, you want to introduce yourself? All right, sounds like we got the sound back up, so hopefully we can keep that under control. All right, so I'm going to jump into this presentation. I have a lot of slides to cover. All of these slides are available online, as well as the handouts that we'll be giving out periodically through this discussion. This discussion is focused on the clean water portion of the water pollution control program. Actually, the water protection program, I'm sorry, the water pollution control side of the house. And so without further ado, we'll just go ahead and get right into the meeting itself. So 4 things I want to get accomplished today is to achieve an understanding of the water pollution control branch, clean water fee structure, revision process, as well as the clean water activities. Second objective, I want to provide an overview of the financial information of the water pollution control branch. I want to achieve an understanding and a consensus about the water pollution control branch shortfall, and I want to achieve an understanding about the cost of clean water services that we provide to the folks of Missouri. I have an agenda. The agenda matches the one that you picked up at the front of the desk. We're going to start by going over the fee review process. All right, a little bit of history about clean water fees. Permitting fees were first established in Missouri in 1990. They were revised in statute in 2000. After 2000, the legislature had decided that instead of making fee revisions via law all the time, they put provisions in law to allow for the specific environmental conditions to go through a process to revise fee structures by rule. The department took advantage of this piece of law in 2013 and revised the clean water fee structure, which became effective in 2015. In 2018, the legislature did change the law and put a sunset on the ability to go through this rulemaking process in 2024. And so that date is out there kind of looming, and will kind of dictate this process as we move forward. Part of the process that's laid out in the statute talks about a comprehensive review for which the department must undergo with its clean water stakeholders. All of you that are in the room are considered our clean water stakeholders. This comprehensive review is established as a requirement in state law, and it includes stakeholders from all the different sectors. So today we have folks that represent the agricultural sector, we have folks that represent industry, municipalities, public and private sewer and water companies. Not sure about the development community. I made a call yesterday afternoon trying to get somebody from St. Louis HBA here. That was one side of the stakeholder universe that I neglected to make sure would be here, although they did see all of the advertisements for this meeting. But we're hoping to get someone from the development community here for future meetings for sure. As we go through the comprehensive review, we're hoping to get agreement on things like what is the shortfall that we're talking about, proposed fee structure changes, whether that be increases, decreases, changes, additions, subtractions, etc. We'll take that agreement to the commission, the Clean Water Commission, and the Clean Water Commission will review that at a regular meeting. We're planning on doing that in April of 2021. After that recommendation is reviewed, they'll have to come back at a meeting after that and make a decision on that. And if you're kind of in the know about how the commission works, usually to pass something in the commission they need 4 yeses, but in the case of clean water fees they have to have a 2/3 majority vote. So with a commission of 7 members, all 5 of the existing membership would have to vote for the proposed changes in this process. Rulemaking. So we're pretty good about how we do understand how to go through rulemaking in the water pollution control program. We've done it a lot of times. This rulemaking is a little bit different because it is kind of established under its own rules and has a few extra steps in it. But it basically follows the same process. The rulemaking in and of itself would need to be done by December 1st of any given year, and then the next following year, the rule would set kind of dormant and go through what is called a JCAR review. And this is where the rule gets a little bit different than the normal rule process, because a fee rule would have to sit kind of dormant for a complete year after it's filed on the December 1st of the previous year in order to go through this time period which allows the legislature to disapprove the rule during its first 60 days. And so that's unique to this process. They don't necessarily approve the rulemaking in and of itself, but they do have an opportunity to disapprove it. So let's kind of go through our tentative schedule for this effort. So February to August of this year, we intend to hold stakeholder meetings. Those stakeholder meetings, this is being the first one, would then facilitate or feed a recommendation to the Clean Water Commission, which we intend to take to them in April of 2021. That meeting I talked about earlier, that the Commission would make a decision on the fee structure, would be somewhere around May of 2021, and then we would go through the normal rule process and get that rule on the books by December 1st of 2021. The whole 2022 year would be when that legislative review happens in that first 60 days, with an anticipated fee change becoming effective on January 1st, 2023. Any questions on the structure of the process so far? Kevin?
Just curious, why is there such a big gap between August of 2020 and April of 2020?
Great question. So there are some steps in there that I didn't put in the chart related to getting department approval of the proposal, taking that to the governor's office and getting their head nod, etc. So there are some steps that I don't necessarily have in this high-level schedule that include a lot of administrative stuff. Any other questions? So now that we know the general process, and if you have questions, please ask. I don't think I did that justice in terms of explaining the process, but we'll start by the next step, going through the current fee structure in and of itself. So our current fee structure, as I mentioned earlier, was effective in January of 2015, and our current fee structure is a structure that's based upon the different sectors that we do permitting work for. We have fees for construction permit, anti-degradation reviews, permits of various types. We also have connection fees for POTWs, and then for our non-POTW domestic wastewater systems, we have permit fees that are based upon flow. We charge fees for 401 certifications, various types of different permits, modifications of various types of different permits, construction CAFO modifications, and permit variances. If you were part of the last fee discussion, you would have seen a comparison of state fee structures, and we plan on updating that and maybe making that a little bit more current, and that will be part of our conversation in March. So if you're interested in those sorts of things, we'll be displaying that visually using kind of a map of the United States as expressed here on the screen, and so that'll be coming in March. So let's jump right into an overview of the activities conducted by the Water Pollution Control Branch. This org chart depicts the FTEs that are performing different clean water activities within the Water Pollution Control Branch. So we'll just start with the Division of Environmental Quality first. Within the division itself, in management of the division, we fund 0.88 FTE. Dropping down into the water pollution control branch, the branch itself is currently funding around 72 FTE. And I will say that these numbers are fiscal year 2019 numbers, and they're based upon expenses. They're not necessarily they don't necessarily equate to actual individuals or people in positions. They're FTE. So the branch is at 72, Financial Assistance Center at 20, our operator certification functions at 1.6, the legal side of the house is at 0.35, and then moving to our regional offices at 50 FTE. Our environmental services program conducts work for the water pollution control branch, and we fund 20 FTE at the ESP. We also have 4.45 FTE doing 319 work. The water protection program does the administrative work for the 319 program. What that means is we actually administer the grants. The grants come through the water protection program, and those monies are spent on projects that are primarily worked through our soil and water program. Now, the water protection program does benefit by way of being able to use a limited amount of 319 funds for water quality monitoring, as well as we use those to do modeling and monitoring efforts associated with TMDL development, as well as monitoring the quality of waters under our 303D type commitments. And so we'll get into more of that as we get going through the presentation, but I wanted to make sure folks knew why soil and water was sitting there at 4.45 FTE. Those are project management FTE for the 319 program. Kind of jumping up, not within the division, but within the umbrella of the director's office, we have the Missouri Geologic Survey that does work related to hydrologic geo-evaluations for the program. We're funding them at 3.44 FTE. And then finally, some administrative support within the Division of Administrative Support at 1/10 of an FTE. Oh, and then finally, and then I think Kevin will find this one interesting, is the Attorney General's office. Off to the right of the screen there, you'll notice that the water program is currently funding 0.71 FTE at the Missouri Attorney General's office. If you are part of the hazardous waste fee discussions that happened late last year, this topic came up, and through evaluation of how much work the individual programs within the department were sending over to the Attorney General's office, it was found that the hazardous waste program was paying for a lot more staff or FTE than they had corresponding work. Whenever they evaluated the other programs, they found that the water program had a lot more work than we were actually paying for. And so the water program will see an increase in 2021 up to 3.11 FTE, or I should say the water pollution control branch. Our public drinking water branch also saw an increase of a couple FTE in 21 as well. So, but we do send a lot of work over to AGO, whether that's for the Clean Water Commission or for litigation on water quality standards or appeals on permits. Those sorts of things are all handled by the Attorney General's office. We'll get into more depth into those who does what type things here in a little bit. Do you have a question?
I have a question. So Chris, looking at, so as I understand it, this is looking at the revenue that supports the people in each category?
Expenditures.
Okay, the revenue that supports the expenditures in each individual category. Is that I mean, is this total revenue, or is this revenue from permits? Is it revenue from?
This is total expenditures funded through revenues from buckets of money that are eligible to pay for operation expenses.
But it's not one category. Like
No. No, this is the whole picture.
Okay.
Chris, you said you back calculated these. So what's the dollar amount associated with an FTE?
It varies based upon the type of position, whether you're talking about an engineering FTE or you're talking about an environmental specialist FTE, or an FTE that I think our financial folks over here have a better answer than I.
The FTE in this one is actually counted by taking the number of hours of staff that coded to water protection, pollution control branch activities, divided that by our standard FTE amount of 2,080. So 1 FTE equals 2,080 hours. That's how we got all these. Does that help?
So it's based on hours.
Based on hours.
It's based on hours, yeah.
And so for each one of these little boxes on here, the dollar cost per hour might be completely different.
Correct.
Okay. Very helpful.
So I felt it was necessary also to break down the branch into its specific hours. So if you notice on the previous slide, we were talking about 72 FTE in the water pollution control branch. And of those 72 FTE, we have 8.9 administrative type FTE. That would be, I'm included in that, as well as folks that do fiscal and budget information type things for the branch. Folks that do billing or procurement, some HR services, as well as just general administration of the branch are included in the admin group. Data management is also housed in there, so keeping MoQuist up and running is in that box, as well as some site-specific, or not site-specific, but some specific projects related to things like integrated management planning or nutrient loss reduction strategy work. Those sorts of things fall into that box as well. But then below that, you'll be familiar with our engineering group, our compliance enforcement group, our watershed protection group, and our operating permit groups within the actual branch itself. Any questions on that? Okay, so the next group of slides are going to go through kind of the different groups that work for the water pollution control branch, and I formatted this in such a way to do a little bit of description about what we do, how much of it we do, what regulations drive what we do, and then any extras that maybe we do that aren't necessarily driven by regulation. So these aren't necessarily all within the branch itself, because as I mentioned earlier, we have MGS doing some work for us, ESP doing some work for us, and those sorts of things. And so we're going to go through them. So AGO will be in here, etc. So our operating permit section, of course, issues operating permits. Permitting and certification work, and we also do CAFO work, largely driven by federal and state statutes in different capacities. And you'll notice on the CAFO line that our federal statutes are only for those NPDES permits and not for our state permits, so it can get kind of complicated there. Some of the other sections are a little bit more straightforward and related to their requirements for doing those activities, but definitely wanted to point out, what drives our work. But we do some extra things. Extra things in the way of operating permits includes coaching applicants, doing a lot of pre-meeting work, discussing limits, discussing permit conditions, responding to public inquiries, going to public meetings, a lot of different extra activities that we do in that group.